Good morning. I'm Glenn Williams with Meade County RECC. We're out of Brandenburg, Kentucky. We're an electric co-op. We serve just over 29,000 residential, commercial, and industrial customers or members in the north central Kentucky, just south of Louisville. What makes us unique to a lot of Laserfiche users is we are a member-owned co-op, or we're a not-for-profit, meaning each of our members that we serve are owners of the company. I guess my first Empower was 7 years ago. Came out, we were actually having a little bit of problems with the software, so Brody and Charles got me out here and learned a lot in that, and really it made me go back and start asking the question, what do our customers want? Well, and by the same token, who are our customers? I'm in IT, so my direct customers are the users. So I started looking. What do our members want first? They want reliability, whether it comes to their power service, no outages, and if there is, how quickly we can get it back on. Accuracy of the information, accuracy of their bills, and us to them being owners of the co-op, they want to ensure that we are efficient, we are cost effective in everything we do, and provide value in the services that we provide to them. And for our users, they want to keep things simple. They don't want to spend the bulk of their day scanning documents, searching for documents. When they've got a customer or member on the phone asking questions. And being a co-op, it was a real different world for me when I went to work for them 9 years ago. I worked retail for about 12 years and experienced a lot of turnover. Well, in our world, in the 9 years I've been there, I've seen probably 8 people leave the organization, and all of those have been to retirement at 35, 40, 45 years. So, my users are very set in their ways in how they do things, and really to them, change was a 4-letter word. So, I when I went back, my first step was quick fields. I was looking for that biggest bang for the buck, how I could make an impact with Laserfiche, and so I went to our VP of Finance. I was like, I'd like to do this, with the young lady that does all of our scanning, and literally, Peggy. I've got a picture of her here later, but she would sit there and she would have a stack of paper, 2-3 foot tall, that she would be scanning every day. She'd spend 6-7 hours sitting there scanning things in and manually typing in the metadata. Well, went to them, and I can finally convince them after a month or two to let me do a quick field session on one type of document, a service order. Well, 60 days into it, her day went from spending 6 to 8 hours of scanning paper and typing to down to about 4. We cut it in half with just one quick field session. So at that point, it was the buy-in to the other departments and pushing other things out when forms came out, workflow, et cetera, that made it real easy. I was able to go to those department heads and say, well, I've saved Peggy 4 hours a day. That's half a person. So now, instead of spending all of her time, head down pounding the keyboard, she's out. She can answer the phone. She can interact with the members when they come in, and there again provide better customer and member service to the folks that pay our bills. Let's see. How can we use that? I'm gonna skip that. And later on, as we move forward after quick fields and workflow, we started doing the integration with SQL, looking up metadata. So at this point, she virtually types nothing, and that what she has today that she manually scans is probably less than an inch thick. So her life has become so much easier. First thing I'll talk about is we in forms. I went to look, there again, where can I make that biggest bang for the buck? And when somebody comes in to sign up for Power, we have half a dozen, if not more, pieces of paper that has to be filled out. The member has to sign. And so, I went and looked at our new service application forms. Back in the day, they were paper forms. That of course, you would do. The CSRs would go into our billing system. At the time, it was an old AS400 system, enter all their information, and then they'd take these paper forms, fill them out, and they'd have to be scanned. Well, and of course, everybody knows the paper forms are costly, they're labor intensive, they're not green. So Laserfiche forms to me seemed like the right answer. But I had one problem. I could not get the signature on that form in the web browser. So at that point, if I went ahead and moved forward with Laserfiche forms, in my mind I was going backwards, because we'd have to type it in, but then we still had to print it and have the member sign it, and then of course send it over to scanning. So the path I went down is I started looking for a signature pad that we could use. Ordered a couple of Topaz signature pads and went off on my own to try to do the integration with the signature pad and forms. And after a few months of failure, even going to a consultant to try to help me with the JavaScript, I got our VAR, Mr. Brody Wallace, and Charles here involved. And the Laserfiche team finally did get me an integration with the I skipped PDF forms. My apologies. For a brief time, I did try to use PDF forms, which I could use the Topaz signature pads on. That was for only about a six month period. But then last in Power, we did get the integration with the Topaz signature pads. So at that point, I was able to move forward with basically any form we had, and collect that signature on it. But at the time, we were still having to manually type the data into the forms, which it was a lot cleaner. It was a lot quicker process. And then fortunately last year, we had Connector released, which I'll digress a little bit on that. I'd actually went and looked at Ratchet X as a solution to automate the completion of these forms. Which, don't get me wrong, George with RatchetSoft has a very, very powerful and good product, but it was definitely overkill for what we were trying to do. I was just simply at the time wanting to pull data out of our billing software, which was on the screen, and insert it into these forms. So fortunately, we got Connector last year. And this is just a screenshot of what our CSRs see. But when the new member comes in, they enter their data into the billing software. Then when it comes time to fill out the forms, they just simply click the appropriate form that they want to fill out. And here's basically an example of one of the forms. Hope I don't have any too much personal information on there. But at that point, with the way the Topaz integration works is basically when you click it, clicks the signature field on the form. You still get the same pop-up that you normally would do, where you would type in the signature, or click the draw where you would use with a mouse. The one thing it does do is it basically takes the place of the draw. So it takes that tab away, and it's just automatically set to where they sign their name, you click submit. Then on the back end, to keep that wraparound, on the thank you page, I've also put a connector icon on there because we still have to get a copy of their driver's license, a copy of their social security number. So here, I put the button on there to scan their IDs, which automatically opens up the scan utility, enters their membership number, so that we can, on the back end, I have a workflow that'll take that membership number and look up the balance of their data to put into metadata from our Oracle tables in the billing system. How that works, that workflow, what I've done to kind of simplify, because basically every document that we do is pretty much based off of that membership number. So what I did is created a incoming folder that my forms go into. If somebody is manually scanning a document, somebody brings in a copy of a lease, after the fact, something like that, they scan to an incoming folder that kicks off a workflow and is basically just looking for that membership number. But what it did is most of my users, you look at the folder structure of the repository, and on a daily, weekly basis, it's like, well, I've got this. Where do I scan it to? What folder? How do I scan it? Well, this is very, very much simplified that process. They just go to the incoming folder. They choose the connector memsep. I've actually got another one on there that just says membership that they scan that into, and workflow takes it from there. It's kind of here's that workflow. I probably should have put a little bit more labeling on this, but generally I'm the only one looking at it. So, but basically I'm retrieving the membership membership number value, doing a couple of queries to the Oracle database, and the way SEDC has the UPN table set up, there are times and situations that the members' information isn't immediately available in the permanent tables in Oracle. So I do have a routing decision there that looks for the customer's name, looks for their social security number. If it doesn't see that, it flows to the right, does a pattern match to take some information off of that number, and queries a temporary table in Oracle. Let's see, and basically the same thing here. When you click the from the connector icon in UPN, we have a scan. Go back. I got click happy. Where is back? From here, they just simply click scan, opens up the utility, and that way they don't have to use the desktop client. It's actually, I've been talking with the new release of Web Access 10. I'm probably going to take the thick client out of the equation and push everything to either connector actions or through Web Access in SharePoint. This is just kind of a quick example of what we've done with our ESRI-based GIS system. And I've been able to do this with both the web version of our GIS system as well as the desktop client. But what basically happens here is you click on any object on the map on our electrical system, whether it be a pole, be a transformer, substation, et cetera, et cetera. And from once you've clicked on, you've selected the device, you can use the connector icon to search everything in the repository related to that piece. And I'm basically just pulling that information from the attributes window that opens up once you've selected the device. This is a quick look of how it looks from within our SharePoint site. But all of my forms are framed in SharePoint. Now with Forms 10, which this is an old, this was back on 9.2. The team side, everything comes up framed within SharePoint. Because what my goal was to give the users a uniform place to basically access anything and everything that they need on a day in, day out basis. But yeah, and here just an example of, I've got forms here coupled with some SQL Server reports, pulling from databases from our GIS system, from our billing system. There again, just to kind of make that user experience a little bit more clean. That way they're not bouncing back and forth between applications. Here's this is Web Access 10 framed from within in the SharePoint site. Also, I'm also our database administrator, and there's probably a dozen or so different applications that I've had to build outside of our billing application, our engineering, and our engineering software. And I started looking at different ways to collect that data, to get into just get data, write data back and forth to and from the databases. And once again, forms was that answer. There's no business process ran in the background, but there again, to keep a nice, neat, uniform look and feel to all of my users, forms once again was the answer for us. I think I've flown through this a whole lot quicker than I thought, but to kind of get, I told you earlier, I had some pictures of Peggy in here. I tried my best to get a picture of what it used to look like, and the picture I had in my mind. We've got some folks here from our that generate our power, and I remember the first day I walked into Jennifer's office, and it's probably from what I remember, a 20 by 20 office, and there was paper stacked everywhere. I mean, it looked like a bomb had blown up in there. So I tried my best to recreate just a before picture, and I couldn't come up with enough paper. But this is kind of what Peggy looked like before. The trash can sitting there, there was about that much paper in the bottom of it that was being sent to shredding. I said I couldn't even come up with enough to put up a good example. But how it relates to customer service. In my mind, now when a member comes in, whether they have a question, they're signing up for service. We are more efficient. So my rendition of that before picture when it relates to members is we had people sitting, we had people waiting, we got people taking naps. Whereas now we have empty chairs sitting there. We have Peggy sitting over here with a nice clean desk area with a smile on her face, and ultimately happy members. So what's next? I guess my goal for this year is to move into mobile, and I've kind of already started that with our GIS software. The first I guess instance that we've done with that, it just made sense to use the form from our GIS software on the iPads, because I needed all of that data displayed on our maps. And thinking about it after the fact, I could have used a Laserfiche form, collected GPS points, and written that back to the SQL tables in ESRI. But at the time, it just made sense to go that route. But what we've got going on, and I had actually turned this in before I'd finished up. But in short, what's happening is that our linemen, they go out, they do an inspection, whether it be on a pole, a transformer, anything sitting out there in the field. Well, if something is wrong, where we need to either replace a pole, where it would need to go staking, or it's an issue that would need to go to our billing department, or just simply something that needs to be repaired, they mark it as such on this inspection form. Which in the evening when they get back into the office, it syncs back up with the GIS server, and that data is just sitting there in the SQL tables in in ESRI. So what I did is I wrote a workflow that on a schedule every night goes out and picks up the records for that day. And because we do still need something sitting in Laserfiche for, if we have an auditor come in, to look at these inspections. So what happens, that first thing that workflow does is it goes out and it pulls in all those records. It fills out a PDF form copy of that inspection, stores it in the repository. Then for each row that's returned, it looks at it and says, okay, is the structure or the item okay, yes or no? If the answer is yes, it's okay, then the workflow just simply ends. Well, if it's no, then it goes down and looks through all of the rest of the data on that form logically, and if it's something that needs to go to our staking department, then it routes it to staking in forms. I'm kicking off a business process at the end of that workflow to do the routing to our billing department, our operations department, and staking department based on the need. At that point, the appropriate personnel in the individual departments, they receive an email. Hey, there's something here that you guys need to do. So they go into forms. They look at their team page on what's available to them. They go in. They assign it to themselves. Then they'll go out in the field, do the whatever work needs to be done, or just simply create a service order. Then they come back to forms. They enter that service order number, work order number, submit the form, and it stores it to the repository. But what that gives me in the end is a complete wrapped up package of where, Joe's went out, he's inspected this pole, he's found this wrong with it, here's the staker that did it, here's the service order and work order where it was completed. So that, if somebody from our RUS or the PSC ever comes in and asks for it, hey, I need to see everything on pole number 1, 2, 3, 4. We search the repository and they have everything in one nice, neat little package. And then in regards to our compliancy issues. Resources that I use, I was telling Charles in our conversation, beforehand here, I really don't consider myself a programmer, a developer, or really anything like that. One of the beautiful things, in my opinion, of Laserfiche is they have made everything so easy for us to work with. And there's been many occasions that I came up blank, kind of like with the Topaz solution, and that was a little bit more involved in the day in day out stuff. But on a I'll say at least weekly, bi-weekly to monthly basis, I'll hit a brick wall where I can't figure something out, and the support that Laserfiche gives us in answers. There's been stuff with JavaScript for forms. I've went out before and thrown the question out there on the answers, and within an hour, somebody's given me the answer that I needed, or at the very least, pushed me in the right direction. So definitely check out Answers, and if you ever run into any problems, there's a lot of people out there that are willing to help. And that's something I've talked to our other software vendors that I wish they had. And unfortunately, nobody else does it quite as good as Laserfiche. At that point, does anybody have any questions? Sir? I'm sorry? You use Oracle? Oracle and SQL. My Laserfiche installation is on SQL.
So I thought I understood you to say you doing a lookup?
Yes.
Did that require coding?
No coding. Just a SQL query.
Okay. And then are you pushing any data into Oracle?
I'm not pushing it into Oracle. I'm pushing it into my GIS SQL tables and just other SQL tables, but I'm not pushing into Oracle. Our billing software is totally Oracle based, and unfortunately, they won't give me or any of their other customers right access to the Oracle tables. If they did that would make my life so much easier, and I could have a whole lot more that we've done with forms and Laserfiche. Sir. At this point, I mean, basically, like you saw there, just when you click on a object on the map, being able to return anything from the repository.
So just documents about a piece of property.
Yes.
Not the actual map.
Not on the actual map. I know there is a third party here that I believe they've got something where you can right click anywhere on the map and it'll pull up a menu. But ultimately, there's not much difference there. As I did talk with them at length a couple years ago, and at that point in time, it just wasn't cost effective for us to do it. And Connector has made it so. And then that last example I was giving as far as mobile, that is an integration with ESRI where I'm just pulling data from the ESRI tables. Yes, ma'am.
SharePoint, your integration with SharePoint, how is that?
Well, I tell you, SharePoint, the Laserfiche SharePoint integration, back about 5 years ago, it was a little. I did have the search and the just the repository view, both things set up, and it was a little bit difficult to set up. And really, the biggest issue with that was configuring security on it. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not even using it anymore because of how well web access fits. Basically, takes that role, and with workflow. Now, there again, I go back that 5 years, and the what am I trying? I can't remember the phrase now. The record center part of it, where you could basically use a SharePoint workflow to hand documents off to Laserfiche workflow and store stuff in the repository. I had a couple of instances set up with that, but Forms has really negated the need for that. So I've been there, done that. Like I said, it worked, but there was a lot of moving parts to it from within SharePoint, and then doing the handoff, making sure all your fields were mapped. So
your main actual user interface for the people like Peggy
mm-hmm.
is the web access.
Yes, yeah. The only thing that they'll be using that isn't web based will be the scan client, which there again, that's being accessed through web access, and quick fields. What we're Avante, 54 named users, and then I also had done 54 participant licenses in Forms. No, it's all internal. Actually, no web link. No, and I have nothing public facing. There was one of those situations where we only had one form that we needed, and we went with the solution from SEDC. I wish that I was able to do it, but there again, looking at cost analysis of it, it was cheaper for me to go with theirs. But import agent, I do have it. I actually want to say that Forms has made that go away as well. Gosh, Brody, what was I using import agent for?
The PDFs.
That's right. Yeah, I was using import agent for those PDF forms to be able to pull them in. But again, like I said, Forms kind of, yeah. Anybody else? Oh, Tim.
All right, so on the what's next, you're going to do kind of get your field crew integration with GIS and Laserfiche.
Mm-hmm.
I got kind of a two-parter. First is, who are you working with in terms of like your team on how that needs to be designed, or
well, on
field guys in there telling you what they want, or are you telling them what you're going to give them?
No, definitely not. As far on the Laserfiche end of it, it's pretty much just myself. As far as how I arrive at that, basically I'll just go sit down with our linemen over the course of the last 3 or 4 months. Go out in the mornings before they head out in the field. Hey guys, what are you doing? Here's what I want to do for you. What'll work for you? And in all of these forums that I've done for them, it's been a process back and forth. Go sit down, talk to them, draw something up, come back to the PC, take it back to them. Is it okay? Does it work for you guys?
So now I know that engineers love paper, and you scan so one line might have 50 pages worth of stuff. Are you that's a lot of stuff to have on your mobile to kind of fit through.
Yeah.
Are you working with them to figure out what the what important part of the document do you really need?
Well,
instead of the entire document.
Well, you're absolutely right, Tim. The engineering folks they do love having a lot of data, but what I've been able to do is break that down into sections. If I wrote everything out, I'd come up with a form 3 feet long, but breaking it down into sections. Of course, in forms you have collapsible sections. So when they open up the form, everything is closed. So they just go down to the section they need. They would open that up, fill it out, submit, and move on from there. Anybody else? No?
All right, let's give another round of applause for Glenn Williams, everybody.
Thank you very much.